So recently the new black and white sets have been revealed and we're slowly getting card reveals every single weekend, and today we've got a very interesting reveal with Jellicent EX, which seems like it's going to have a pretty big impact on the gameplay moving forward. But like I mentioned, we do have the new black bolt and white flare sets coming out later this year, which is kind of a set dedicated to the black and white Pokemon here. Every single Pokemon is getting a card, they've already announced that, and we are slowly getting different reveals here. We've seen some really cool cards so far revealed, like Electric with the Dynamo motor ability, and then we're also seeing some other cards get some kind of like, pretty much one-to-one reprints, but a little bit different. Like Embor, for example, had a card previously that's pretty similar to what it has now. And so it does have a lot of people wondering about reprints of some other very famous black and white Pokemon, like Garbodor, for example, with the Garbotoxin ability, or even its other most famous card with the Trashalanche attack. Both very impactful cards from back in the day. I didn't play the TCG back then, so I never had to experience it personally, but I've seen the horror stories, so I am curious to see if we are going to get one of these two cards back. But there are a lot of cool black and white Pokemon that we're seeing cards kind of get reprinted of, maybe changed a little bit, HP buffs, nerfs, things like that, but we're seeing a lot of similar attacks, abilities, and things like that. So a lot of people are excited because back then it was a really cool format. So the reveal of a new Jellicent card this morning was very interesting because we have not seen a Jellicent with this type of ability before. As you can see here, we have one previously with Cursed Body, we've also had one with Spiteful Spirits, and even one with Stickiness. They've all been pretty much water type cards, but instead now we do have a psychic type Jellicent EX. But of course with Jellicent it is going to evolve from Frillish, which was also announced today, and this is actually the card that I noticed right away because of its Sea Shadows attack for 20 damage, but it does item lock your opponent, obviously very similar to Badoo. So again, we do have another item locking basic Pokemon here. It does only have a 1 energy cost. Badoo obviously has no energy costs, but this one just requires a psychic energy. And obviously when there's decks like Gardevoir, which can kind of accelerate psychic energy and has a lot of energy in the deck itself, it's pretty easy to get psychic energy out on the field. Now it does have a 3 retreat cost, which is never really good, but in this case I don't think it really matters because with a Pokemon like this you kind of just want to sit in the active spot so you can item lock your opponent. It has 50 more HP than Badoo, so it is a little bit tankier, and especially in the early game this thing could be very annoying to deal with. But it gets better from that because Jellicent EX has 270 HP, which is pretty decent overall. A lot of EX Pokemon are kind of in that like 220 to 300 range for the most part, so 270 is pretty solid. And this does have the Sea Curse ability. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent cannot play any item cards or attach any Pokemon tool cards from their hand. So not only does it item lock you, but it also prevents you from playing different types of tool cards. And unlike a card like Badoo or back in the day Seismitoad, you don't have to attack to use that ability. That is just your ability, so you can attack on top of that. And you do have the Power Press attack for 80 damage, but if there's 2 extra energies attached to the Pokemon, it does 80 more damage. So again, when you have decks out there like Gardevoir, which can easily accelerate energies, it's very easy to get those 2 extra energies to hit for 160 and also item lock your opponent and make it to where they can't play any tool cards. So this thing kind of sounds like a monster, not gonna lie. Why is it a psychic type instead of a water type? I couldn't tell you that. I mean, obviously in the games it's water ghost, so the psychic typing does make sense, but you would think maybe they go the water route, but no, instead they go psychic route here, and obviously it makes Gardevoir even stronger if people decide to play this. Now of course, like with any card, we have to test these things, kind of see how does it do into the meta, all that kind of stuff, but on paper this sounds like it would be pretty solid to include. And really this seems like a good card on its own. The reason why a lot of people have been comparing it to Gardevoir as like an inclusion for that deck is because of the fact that with Gardevoir you can get those extra energies, that way you're hitting for 160 pretty quickly, so obviously that makes it very easy to do that. But I could see this card being good like in its own deck with something else. A couple of the weaknesses to kind of point out here. Number one is that Frillish does have 80 HP, so you cannot get it out with Buddy Poffin, so they kind of intentionally do that with some Pokemon. We've seen that like with Ens, Darumaka has 80 HP, so you can't get it out. Same thing with Shaman that's coming up soon. So it is kind of a thing that's intentionally done, I think, to kind of make it not too broken. So it is not able to be found out with Buddy Poffin, so that's kind of a good thing. And then the other obvious weakness here is the fact that this Pokemon has to be in the active spot to item lock and to tool lock. So there are Pokemon out there like Iron Bundle, for example, which can kind of push them out of that active spot. Now that being said, if you do have another Jellicent EX on your bench, I mean, then really your only option is to boss something out, because you can't counter catcher, you can't prime catcher, so your only other option there is to use boss's orders, which is also a card that I believe is not getting reprinted. So I think after this next rotation we might lose boss, and then at that point I think the only other gusting supporter is like the Team Rockets card. And it is also weak to dark, so we do have a couple of dark decks out there. You got the Ends deck, you got some of the Team Rocket stuff as well. Charizard is out there as well. Those are just a couple of things to kind of note with this card to kind of watch out for. But overall, I think this is a very interesting card. I think it's a really interesting ability that's going to really have an impact on the gameplay here. I do think that this is something that can definitely work with Gardevoir, but again, I could see it kind of on its own as we get more cards revealed. I'm curious to see how the Garbodor reprint's going to look. I'm curious to see if we're going to, see the Trashalanche or the Garbotoxin. It's going to be very interesting. Like, we're kind of slowly getting cards here. We're kind of piecing this set together. There's still a lot of Pokemon to reveal, so I think this is going to be a really, really cool and impactful set, and I'm honestly very excited to see more cards that we get. I do think ever since rotation happened, we've kind of seen a decline in like control kind of stall decks, so I do kind of expect that we're going to get a lot of those types of cards in this new set, just because it's kind of its own like little archetype that's kind of always been around, and right now it just feels really weak. Like, we don't see any kind of Pidgeot control doing anything. Snorlax is not a thing anymore either, so I do think that with this upcoming set, we might start to see some cards that can kind of work together to kind of create this control archetype that we're kind of used to seeing in the gameplay. But it's just honestly crazy because I feel like there's so many different mechanics. Like, there's Terra Pokemon, there's Trainers Pokemon, there's the Black and White set, and then we also have the Mega Pokemon coming out too. And of course, one of the cards with that is obviously Mega Gardevoir, so another Gardevoir buff there. This is just one of those decks that feels like it's never gonna die. Like, every time that somebody thinks it's gonna go away, it just comes back even stronger, and we've just seen it time and time again. Pretty much since the Curlia rotated, everyone said this deck was just not gonna really exist anymore, and since that happened, we've basically only been seeing results for Gardevoir. Gardevoir has been winning tournaments left and right, and it's really only gonna get stronger with cards like Jellicent, with cards like Mega Gardevoir when that comes out. I think this deck is going to be a force to be reckoned with up until it actually rotates out. And even when it rotates out, we do still have Mega Gardevoir, so I'm sure it'll still kind of be around in some shape or form. It just won't be this card anymore. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This regional this past weekend in Melbourne, you look at the top 8 here, and we have 5 Gardevoir players out of the top 8. 5 Gardevoir players out of the top 6 to be specific here. So obviously this is a deck that is doing fantastic. It's only going to get better, and I think as we get more cards and we kind of see what they do, I do think that a lot of those cards can kind of apply to Gardevoir, and we'll kind of see how it works. It's a deck that's very like fluent, like you're able to kind of just adjust it in different ways. I mean, we've seen multiple builds of Gardevoir, and we've kind of just seen different ways to play the deck. And I do think with cards like that, it kind of opens up a whole nother world for the deck to where you could include that and just basically play it in a whole different way. With that being said, let me know what you guys think of this card in the comments below, and let me know if you're excited to see other cards revealed like Garbodor. I'm really kind of curious to see how they're going to print that one. So again, I didn't play back in the day, so I am kind of new to a lot of those older cards and what they do, so I am kind of hoping that we get some reprints here just so I get to kind of see how that is. And yeah, Jellicent EX is going to be a force to be reckoned with, I'm pretty sure. Could be wrong, but again, the basic seems good, the evolution seems good, and usually when that's the case, the card is really good. So yeah, but all that being said, hope you guys have a fantastic day. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.